but here you can see what happens when a building becomes vacant, and this is just the beginning.
There are so many not satisfied people.
Just something you wouldn't see anywhere else in Seoul.
기분 나빠 우리는.
Look at this, there, all around me. Check this out behind me. Isn't this fantastic? You can see how charming they are. What is up, everyone? Are you ready for a new neighborhood adventure? I'm on my way to Pungnap-dong, located in Songpa-gu. And the neighborhood starts right there at that apartment complex that looks like a ski slope, a giant ski slope. And it's a special neighborhood, a very special neighborhood. There is no other neighborhood like Pungnap-dong in Seoul. And that's because the whole neighborhood, or almost the entire neighborhood, is surrounded by an earthen wall. An earthen wall that dates back to the early Baekje period. But if you look at the map, and that's something I always do, so I zoomed in on Pungnap-dong and I noticed that a lot of the land is empty. And I mean really empty. No building, and the space turned into a small park or a parking space. The entire neighborhood just looks like that, and I don't know why. So we're going to investigate. Let's do this. You know, when Korean summer really has kicked off, when the humidity goes through the roof, and today is that day. It's so humid. You can see the earthen wall already. That's it, that's where we're going. This is where Pungnap-dong starts. And as always, I'm excited to explore something new. Because many people think that after having explored 119 neighborhoods, which is a lot already, even though there are 467 in total, most people think that we've seen the best already. I disagree, and I'm about to prove that to you. We made it. Pungnap-dong. 생각보다 높아요. It's quite high, a lot higher than I expected. See, if you look at this, it reminds me a bit of Gyeongju. So you don't have to go all the way to other cities in Korea to see something ancient. You see something ancient here in Seoul. If you want to get inside Pungnap, you have to drive through these openings in the earthen wall that are at the same time also parking spaces. And there's another one a little bit further down the road, and that's where we will begin. It's really important to keep in mind the season when you decide to visit this fortress, because now it's summer. Everything looks lush green. When you come here in winter, the scenery may be completely different. It's really hard to give you any perspective of the height. This may be 4 times me, almost 2 meters here, so 8 meters, perhaps a little bit higher, I don't know exactly, but it's pretty high, which is hard to see on camera. But we are inside now, we're inside the fortress. Just think about it, all these people here, they basically live inside the Baekje fortress. Here, that's the first sign of the controversies in this neighborhood. Something, I'm not entirely sure what it says. So my guess is that right now it's not allowed to dig into the ground, or not easily allowed to dig into the ground, making it very hard to redevelop everything that you see here. So I guess some of the locals here, they want to get rid of those restrictions because they are ready for redevelopment. This is what I meant, guys. When you look at the map and you see those empty spots, this is one of those. I guess there used to be a building here. Maybe the government is the one who bought it, demolished it, and then turned it into a little park. So eventually they can do excavations here and do more research about the Baekje fortress. That's my guess.
Not far into the neighborhood, after following the wall for a couple of minutes, I stumbled upon a place that looked like a traditional market that, despite the rain, still felt surprisingly lively.
So we're now a little bit further into the neighborhood, and here you have a traditional market. And with traditional, I mean really traditional. This is like old school style, organized market where it's all over the place. Young and old come. It's just a vibe. And it makes it really feel like once you go through the wall, you enter a village. It's its own thing. Because of the wall, it's kind of separated from the rest of the city. Charming market for sure, but here you can see what happens when a building becomes vacant. They demolish it, turn it into either parking space, a park, or whatever the fuck this is, and then fence it off. And this is just the beginning, because here is another one, there's another one, and here around the corner, when we walk a little bit further, you'll find a lot more. Wow, this is really interesting, guys. Here you can see that a house recently disappeared, and they recently turned it into this concrete section. There you can still see where the staircase used to be.
You're a YouTuber?
Yeah, I'm a YouTuber.
Oh, name. What name?
Aigo Bart.
Oh.
Aigo Bart. Aigo. 그 한국어로 Aigo. Aigo.
아이고.
네, 그 Aigo. 이름 Bart.
Oh, good.
네, Aigo Bart.
Yeah, wow.
풍납동에서 살아요?
Yes.
어때요?
좋아요. Good.
Good, good.
Yeah.
네, 풍납동 장점 뭐예요? 살기 장점.
문화유산 유산이 많아요.
아, 유산이 많아요?
Yes.
이런 거?
Delicious food.
Delicious food?
Yes.
맛집 추천해 주세요.
저기 내려가면
저는 옛날 가게 좋아해요.
오 감자탕 내려가면 있어요.
감자탕?
Yeah.
오케이. 이름이?
대사랑이요.
매사랑?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Oh, bye-bye. So here you see what happens. These houses are still here, but they are vacant now. What they do first is they put a fence up, and then my guess is that eventually they will tear it down and create another one of those parking places here, or parks, or whatever. Would it be nice if they use those spaces for the public? But there must be a reason why they don't.
America?
No, Holland. Netherlands, Nederlanden. Do you live here?
Yes,
How is life in Pungnap-dong?
it's fantastic. First of all, the air is very fresh.
But I'm very curious about one thing. Why are there so many parking spaces?
Because it's a cultural 문화재. There is three types of places.
Yes.
1권역, 2권역, 3권역. 1권역 is block the house and like this here and there. So many places.
So many.
Yeah, so many. 풍납 1동 and 2동, they are the same. And 3권역, you build a house, limited height.
Jagebal Nopi restriction?
Yeah.
Yes.
Under the 7th floor.
Pungnap Simin, how do they feel about this?
Actually, ugly of course.
Yeah.
But someday, all of these places make a park.
I did some reading, and apparently back in the late 1990s, archaeologists discovered large amounts of Baekje remains beneath the neighborhood. As a result, strict preservation rules were introduced. Digging deeper than 2 meters is heavily restricted, and new construction became extremely limited. As you can see in this map, the area is divided into 5 preservation zones based on how likely archaeologists believe important Baekje remains are buried on the ground.
But some spots are nice with the green plants, flowers.
I heard that they are make a garden here and there. So many places. Japan garden, French garden.
Kukje garden.
Yeah. I've learned English for over 15 years. If I getting older and older.
It's hard to study.
Yeah.
But you look young.
No. You're kidding.
55?
Thank you. Thank you.
You have a very youthful aura.
I don't know when will come. They will make a garden. There are so many not satisfied people.
Why?
Our house price is very
Low.
low than other.
Songpa-gu, very expensive gu.
Yes. I hope to see you again.
Yes. Thank you so much. See you again next time. Bye bye.
Zone 1 has the highest archaeological value, while Zone 5 has the lowest. In Zone 1, the government aims to preserve the area almost entirely. Residents are gradually bought out and relocated, and new construction is essentially impossible. Many of these sites are expected to become archaeological parks in the future. As a consequence, the population has dropped dramatically from about 57,000 people in 2001 to just over 35,000 in 2026.
We're now at the eastern fortification wall. Here you're allowed to enter the area and walk along the wall. And along the way you have these signboards over there, and they all have different folk stories from the Baekje era. So if you're into that, make sure you read them. They're both in English and in Korean. Really interesting stuff. It reminds me a lot of my hometown. In the Netherlands we have something which is called a vestingstadje. Like my hometown, Grave, is also a vestingstadje. Surrounded by an earthen wall like that, with a moat, Pungnap-dong reminds me of a vestingstadje. And within you have the residences of the locals, you have a church, perhaps a market, a few other things. And the wall was there to protect anyone who lived inside the vestingstadjes. Although the moat that used to be here is gone now. I read online that there was a moat here, and a pretty big one too. Hey, look at this. We are allowed to go on top of the earthen wall.
The fortress originally had a circumference of about 3.5 kilometers, but centuries of erosion by the Han River destroyed much of its western wall, leaving only about 2.1 kilometers today. After decades of excavations, scholars concluded that Pungnap earthen fortress was most likely Hanam Wiryaseong, the first capital of the Baekje Kingdom. Today, it is widely regarded as the kingdom's earliest royal capital, where its highest ranking elite and royal institutions were once based.
This is the spot. This here is the spot. As a young kid, whenever it snowed in the Netherlands, I would go to a nearby park and find a hill and take my sleigh and slide down the hill. This is the perfect spot, right here. Right here. But so far, so good. Pungnap, you're interesting. Now the real fun begins. We go into the neighborhood. But I forgot my umbrella. I left it at the observatory. Yes, I expected a few empty plots. But while being here, you realize there are a lot more empty spaces like this here in front of me. A lot more, not just a few. And Pungnap-dong is, even though it looks small on the map, it's not so small at all. There's all this emptiness in between these buildings. It's just something you wouldn't see anywhere else in Seoul. See, this building is empty, but it's still here. Look at this, guys. Look at this. Look at these red brick villas. Isn't this just so very iconically Korean? I don't think we say this enough, but this to me, if I see this, I know, 역시, I'm in Korea, that kind of feeling. And if you continue this line, you can imagine how these red brick villas used to be all along this street, used to be right over there, used to be right where I'm standing now. It slowly turns into this, but this is what it used to look like. Most parts of Pungnap-dong used to look like this. Yeah, just look at what already has disappeared. Everything here in front of me. Earlier, the woman was talking about how they changed some of these empty spaces into a garden. I guess this is one of those gardens. Look, it's really well made. I think they do indeed need to turn these empty spaces into something like this. Look at this. This is cool, this looks nice, really nice. And this must have been done recently, because if you look at the map, and all I see on the map is concrete, parking spaces and more concrete. But in the meantime, in reality, it looks like this. It looks like a beautiful, what is it? French garden? See, you see where we are on the map? You see? It's all just concrete and parking. I see it now. On the map, it's already called a Yongguk Chongwon. So English garden. But yeah, if they don't do that, then everything just basically looks like this. My lovely subscribers, you've seen many videos of mine, you've seen me go through many neighborhoods, but this may be the weirdest of all. I can't describe it in words, how weird it is to see so many of these. This is like the epicenter of where redevelopment, cultural heritage, the needs of locals come together and clash. I don't think you will find any other neighborhood in Seoul where you can see those three come together and turn the neighborhood into something like this. And here, guys, according to the map, we have the Korean garden, the Yongguk Chongwon. There used to be a building here, it's gone. You can still see it on the map, like many other things. The last time I was here, remember, there used to be huge buildings here that were part of the Seoul English village. It looked like a big, dark monastery. The gate should give you an idea of what it looked like. Like I said, just like a monastery. Look at this gate. They didn't start the redevelopment yet. They're actually doing it seems like they're doing some excavations. Yes. This is what I wanted to show you guys. This is the Pungnap-Baekje Kingdom. It's probably a good example of what eventually most of these plots will become after excavations.
옛날에는
네.
아무것도 없었어요. 근데 이거를 만든 거 인공으로 만든 거예요. 사람이 손으로 만드는 거라.
아, 그래요? 진짜 옛날 거 안 있잖아요.
이거가 없었어요. 근데 이걸 사람이 인공으로 만든 거예요. 저런 거 초가집.
네.
초가집 그런 거 인공으로 만든 거.
아요.
원래 저런 집들이 여기 다 있었던
네네네.
거예요.
그 앞으로 이런 공모처럼 생길 거예요?
예, 이런 것처럼 저기도 집을 다 부시고 있잖아요.
네.
인공토. 거기도 이제 이런 걸로 만들려고 그래요. 사람 인공으로, 사람 손으로. 70년 살았어요.
70년 풍납동에서 사셨어요?
예.
아이고, 오래 사셨어요.
나이 많아요, 못 잡았으면.
근데 저를
거기는 하고 나는 주름이 많잖아요, 목에 나이가 있으니까.
So yes, this is the future of Pungnap, this park. Although everything you see here was made by hand, as the gentleman told us. But it should give you some type of idea of what the fortress, well, inside the fortress used to look like. Here, dwelling house of Baekje, a replica of a dwelling site 2 in the B section, all very technical bullshit talk. But anyways, a Baekje dwelling house. Let's have a look inside.
As much as I dig the excavations, no pun intended, and as curious as I am about treasures still buried underground, I'm not exactly impressed with how this park has been turned into a historical site. It doesn't really entice me, either visually or through the way the stories are presented. I think there's plenty of room to make it more engaging for both young and old. Personally, I would rather see the actual stone foundations of these ancient buildings than cheap replicas or simple markings on the ground.
A little sticky now. If there's ever a good time to say sheep. That stuff is sticky. I had a little Dr. Pepper fountain all over me. You see here? Here you walk through the entrance of an old house. We're now approaching the front door. And now, whoop, I'm supposed to be inside someone else's house. And so far, I haven't seen any demolishing project going on, but here is the first one I see. They're still not done yet. It's about to disappear forever. 집이 다 없어져서 갑자기 자리 많아졌어요. 네.
기분 나빠 우리는.
아, 그래요? 왜요?
동네가 많아야 사람이 많고.
근데 선생님 혹시 아직도 여기 사세요?
네.
건물 없어질 거예요?
여기서 살다.
네.
여기.
이 빌라에서?
이 빌라에 살다가 저쪽으로 이사가.
아, 그럼 기분이 나빠서요? People feel bad because of the situation. The longer I'm here, the more I realize that it's not just a few spots. I keep repeating myself, but it's all over the place. Like look at this. There, all around me. Amid all these parking lots, there's just one building still holding strong to their spot here, right in the middle. When I was young, I read and watched a lot of Asterix and Obelix, a small village that put up a strong resistance against the Roman Empire. So the Roman Empire conquered most of Europe, except for that one small village where Asterix and Obelix, together with the other folk from the village, with the help of a magic potion, could fight and win every battle against the Romans. This house reminds me little of that story. Reminds me that I have to get my umbrella later. But look at this. As an outsider, it may be very easy to tell them, you know, Yusan, Baekje, we should preserve, it's very important, fuck off, get out of your house. As a local, if you have lived here for 10, 20, 30, or like the man, 70 years, and you're being bought out of your house, and your real estate, the value of your house that you bought a long time ago drops in value, it's a completely different story. That will impact the way you look at heritage. So as an outsider, in this case, it's better to say nothing. Check this out behind me. Isn't this fantastic? You have the Seoul, Konggangwon, Oriental Medicine, you have Ibal, and you have the Suzon right next to each other. All still operating their business in one of those older dandok juteks. But that's a snapshot from bygone days. Now, because of all the empty space around these red brick villas, you can see how charming they are. With these little staircases, decorated with flowers, some personal stuff from the people who live here. You have the gum trees in the garden, nice walls, nice fences. They all have their own style, texture. They're beautiful, they're beautiful.
This is one neighborhood I will definitely remember, and I'm curious to see what it looks like years from now. What treasures are still waiting to be discovered, and what will they teach us about the Baekje Kingdom? What happens after the remaining residents have been bought out and excavations are complete? Will this eventually become one incredible archaeological park? The potential is certainly there, but for now I'm not convinced by the current historical park. What do you think is the best way forward for the people in Pungnap? Let me know in the comments below. And if you'd like to support the Welcome to My Dome project, you can become a channel member. Soon I will be adding a new membership tier that includes an exclusive ebook with some of my personal Seoul travel tips as a thank you. I will let you know when it's ready. Pungnap-dong will go on the map as the battle over the fortress. Welcome to my dong.
It was very shinky, very shinky. We can add this to the list of things I love very much about Korea. You don't really have to worry about losing your stuff or your stuff gets stolen. It's a good spot to say goodbye. I will see you in the next neighborhood video. Haru!